In early 2022, a Reddit user named Omblae and their partner took a friend's puppy out for a walk through an old forest just outside Bristol. A walk that ended with a chilling discovery and a sound that they still can't explain. Despite being just outside Bristol, the area was remarkably quiet. The woods were vast, dense, and seemingly forgotten, nestled on a quiet hill and rarely visited. The only person they saw on that walk was an older man, who greeted them and patted their puppy and mentioned, almost casually, that both of his dogs had died just on the edge of this woods. Then he added, "Just one of the many tragedies to have befallen these woods." The couple exchanged a glance. That final line stuck with them. But as the pup could only be out for around 45 minutes, they had limited time, so they decided to take a shortcut through a dense part of the forest. As they followed the trail deeper in, it began to fade, eventually disappearing into a small clearing. That's when the sound began. Loud, unnatural, and unlike anything they'd heard before. The Redditor describes it as like a woman calling in a hollow and a slightly melodic way. It sounded like a beckoning call. The noise lasted just a few seconds, but it was deafening. The dog froze and turned to face the direction that it came from. According to Omblae, it sounded nothing like any living thing I'd heard before. An animal would have had to have been 6 foot tall to make that much noise. Disturbed, they decided to leave. But as they walked back, something else struck them. The noise had been so loud it shocked them into motion, and yet, when they asked their partner whether they'd heard it, they hadn't. I had no idea how she didn't hear it. It was so loud. Later research revealed that the woods have a long reputation for ghostly sightings. According to Omblae, the area is known locally as one of the most haunted in Somerset. Tales include a headless horseman, eerie carriages, and a former caretaker who died in a home as it was raided. They later realised that strange sound they'd heard had come just from a few metres away from where the caretaker's house once stood. The Redditor concludes their story by saying, "If you believe in ghosts or not, being in those woods is not pleasant. One is always on edge, and that experience has turned me off ever going back." Every now and then, they still return, but only by car. They pull over, switch off the engine, and just listen, but they never get out. "3 years ago, in 2022, a Reddit user named FlibV1 took their 2 young children, around 5 and 6 years old, to pick blackberries in the woods. They'd been to this area before, finding it a quiet, untouched spot with plenty of fruit. But this time, they decided to approach it from a different direction. The day was bright and sunny, but as they stepped into the woods, something felt off. The trees seemed darker, denser. Just inside the entrance stood a tree draped in Christmas lights, faded, weather-beaten, and hauntingly out of place. Trinkets hung from the branches, and pinned to the bark were photos and letters, most of them damaged by the rain. Only the odd face or smudged word was still visible. It looked like a memorial, the kind of thing that people leave behind after a tragedy. Possibly a death, possibly something else. They carried on toward the blackberry path, but at the entrance, a tree had fallen across the way. There was no stump in sight. It didn't seem to have simply fallen though. It looked as if someone had dragged it across the path, like a deliberate barrier. Opposite that, tucked deeper into the trees, was a small shelter built from sticks. Still, they stepped over the fallen tree and continued down the path. It was long, dead straight and tunnel-like, trees arching overhead, blocking out the sun, and every 10 meters or so, there had been a fire. Not just 1 or 2. Fires all the way down, small, burnt patches scattered along the entire half-mile track. By now, things were definitely unsettling. As they neared the end of the path, they spotted a clearing to the right, a near-perfect circle with a large tree stump at its centre. Around the perimeter, hanging from the bare branches and leafless trees, were children's clothes. And tied to the stump, in the middle, floating just above it, was a half-deflated helium balloon, one clearly meant for a child. Then, their youngest son said, "Look at all the children playing." That was enough. They turned back and hurried out of the woods, bursting into sunlight and making their escape. Eventually, they found a good spot and picked some blackberries, trying to laugh it off. It all felt a bit silly, being scared of trees and trinkets in broad daylight. But just then, the first crack of thunder hit. The sky darkened and a violent storm rolled in, the kind with forked lightning and torrential rain. It was sudden, loud, and relentless. They made their way back into the car, this time skirting the edge of the wood instead of going through them. On the way, they passed a field where a white horse stood completely still, just staring at them. On their own, none of these things were especially terrifying, but the combination, the atmosphere, the strange sights, the way the light shifted, just gave the whole place a quiet, creeping dread. They called it the Creepy Woods from then on, and apart from one return visit to show their partner, they haven't been back since. They now pick their blackberries elsewhere. This one comes from Reddit user Hoodman, introducing the post by writing, "So this didn't happen to me, but to a friend of mine. If it sounds familiar, it's because I've shared this before. Many years ago, a friend of theirs set out on a solo camping trip. It was a simpler time. He brought along a tent, the usual gear, and notably, a plastic carrier bag full of disposable cameras, which wasn't an uncommon gadget of the era. His plan was to document the trip, take in the nature, and simply enjoy some peaceful time alone. He spent his days relaxing, snapping photos of the scenery, trees, fields, wildlife, and even the occasional picture of himself posed in front of the landscape. Each night he set up camp, zipped himself into his tent, and drifted off to sleep, surrounded by nothing but the stillness of the outdoors. After a few uneventful but pleasant days, he returned home and dropped the cameras off at a local pharmacy to be developed, as you did back then. A week later, he went to collect the prints. Flipping through them, everything looked exactly as expected. Gentle countryside, a forest, clear skies, a calm, quiet trip captured in his snapshots. But then he noticed something strange. The final photo on every roll of film was a picture of him asleep in his tent. Not from the outside, not from the distance. Somebody had been close enough to unzip the tent, point the camera at him, and take a photo while he slept. To this day, no one has ever come forward, and he still doesn't know who did it.